Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
Wow,
it's
you
gotta
called
look.
that right, Andrew.
What'd you say, Colleen?
I said you called that right. You're absolutely right with the location.
Yeah, you get it right every now and then.
How do you blur out the background on your image?
There's a setting. I forget where it is, but I found it. It took me a couple of years.
Yeah, I looked up. I looked
And
around
Ken-
here. I can't seem to find it.
Preferences, if you go to upper left, preferences, and then you'll see background and filters.
It's a great background. Your background is great too, Doug.
Oh, thanks. That's
Preferences.
Central Park and Central Park West, you know.
We knew
I'm
that.
in my living room and I just love being in my living room.
That's very nice. You got a cool picture behind you. Is that Bob Marley?
Of
It
course
is Bob Marley. It's a silk painting of Bob Marley. The artist is from Ghana.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And what a talent he was.
Yep.
Wow.
Nice to see you, Ken.
I see you. I'm looking at Bob.
Yeah, he's looking at Bob.
Okay, where did Howard go?
Pacific
Where'd I go?
Northwest.
Andrew.
He's right there.
Okay, thank you. Andrew. I'm gonna make you co-host, okay? But I should promote somebody to host, so, because I can't stay on all evening. So maybe I'll make you the host and make, and I'll have, I'll make Howard the co-host.
Right.
Okay?
You can't stay all evening, Michelle?
No, I have other duties and emails and papers and letters and reports to get going.
Let's see how we are in terms of members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 so far, okay.
We have 11 on our committee.
And
So we have a quorum. Jay is not coming tonight. So,
And Elaine is not coming.
okay. So why don't we get started?
We can indeed get started. Don't think we have anybody from the precincts on yet.
No, you do not.
We do not. I'm not positive that they are going to be able to come, right?
Yeah, Inspector Yaguchi said that he couldn't come.
I also want to flag, please save the chat at the end of the meeting, okay? And label it transportation in today's state. Thank you.
We have the obligation to ask if somebody would take the minutes of the meeting tonight. We must have minutes. And everyone volunteers all at once, just like last time. Let's see, who hasn't done it?
I've been away for a long time for campaign and other reasons. I'm happy to help if you're looking for somebody to take minutes.
Oh, that's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Elizabeth. That's very nice.
Thank you so much.
Taking one for the team tonight.
Is
Yes.
that because you have a poster behind you that says we can do it?
Exactly.
Okay.
And Jose is going to be out with the dog for most of the evening. So
Well,
be-
appreciate that. Howard, since we don't yet have anybody from either precinct, do you want to start with your guest from Revel?
Our guest from Revel.
Our guest,
Our guest
right.
is Haley Robinson from Revel, and she's going to speak briefly about what Revel's up to, and then we can ask questions, which I know many of us do have. So Haley, why don't you just speak for a short time about Revel, and then we'll follow up with questions.
Terrific. Thank you for having me here today. Haley Robinson, VP of Business Development here at Revel. Many of you may know Carol Antunes, who unfortunately has moved on to greener pastures, but was doing our community affairs work here in New York City. So bear with me. It's been quite a while since I've done a community board meeting. And if I don't know any of the answers to questions you guys might have, I will make sure to follow up ASAP to get them to you. So I will try not to waste too much time, but I have a quick deck that I will try to breeze through. Let me just pull it up and share. Oh, it is disabled.
So whoever's the host, if you go into share screen, you can enable panelists to share their screen.
It's under advanced.
It should be under share screen.
It's a green button.
Share content, yeah. Haley, are you putting up what you want us to see?
It is still coming up as disabled. I think you would probably need to enable me, Howard.
We've got share content on. Only
Okay,
the host
so I
can
go into
share.
share screen, which is all okay.
It said only the host can share. I thought I was host, but it's not working. Oh, wait a minute, screen.
I think it should work now, Haley.
Great. Oh, yep, here it is.
Okay, it's fixed.
Terrific. Sorry,
There
just
we go.
1 second. Oh,
It was working.
yeah, no, it's back. Here we go. Share. Okay, thank you for bearing with me here. So you guys are probably familiar somewhat with Revel. We are a Brooklyn born and based company. We started with Mopeds back in the latter part of 2018, 2021, have expanded our offerings, namely to electric vehicle charging infrastructure and ride share. So similar to an Uber or Lyft. But in addition to being the having a mission to electrify New York City, another key value and pillar for Revel is to not use the gig economy. So we use only W-2 employees. We fundamentally reject the Silicon Valley trope that you cannot afford to run a business and not pay your employees. And so, you know, in New York, where we have fewer micromobility operators, this comes up somewhat less, but on the rideshare side, there are certainly a cohort of TLC licensed drivers that are looking for actual employment options, which we provide them, which means they get paid, you know, for every hour they're working, they're compensated, they have access to, in fact, the same benefits that I do and our CEO. And so as part of an economies of scale, our mission is we are a transportation operation company, bringing these additional transportation options to New York City, particularly for people who either do not want to own a personal use vehicle, you know, or but want access to one. So just starting off with our mopeds here, it's probably not even worth it to get into because I'll get into a brief thing on each of our products, but mopeds, we are street legal. You guys are probably very familiar, particularly recently, know that there are many more two-wheel vehicles in the city than there were before. To clarify, we are a limited use Class B motorcycle. So every rider is required to have a valid driver's license, and this functions like a vehicle. 30 miles an hour, needs to operate exactly where a motor vehicle would operate. Let me move forward. Oh, and even just to take like a little bit of a step back, The way that we maintain these vehicles, we do not take them on and off the road unless they need to be repaired. We swap batteries, which is technology that, only in 2018 was really viable. And so we have our employees will come, I would say between every 1 and 3 days, depending on ridership, to replace the batteries. They do a light maintenance check, make sure helmets are in the helmet case, clean the helmets, flag if there may be something that's not detected, address anything that might be improper, and move on. And so the way that we work, this is our service area. We span 4 boroughs, but our service area refers to where you can park. Now that this doesn't supersede the posted regulation, it doesn't mean that if there's a meter, you don't have to pay it or you can park at a fire hydrant. It just means you can only start and stop your ride at legal parking spots as long as they're legal for 24 hours for within you've parked. After then, it becomes our responsibility. And so we do pass along tickets to our riders, not just for financial reasons, but to enforce the behavior. I mean, we give tickets, right, to enforce behavior. There needs to be some sort of consequence to that. So we pride ourselves on being responsible, responsive. We work in lockstep with our regulators. We have no desire to disrupt anything, much less the city streets of New York. Again, we're just trying to provide additional transportation options and incentivize a transition to electric vehicles. Unlike our competitors in the micromobility and transportation tech space as well, we do have 24/7 customer service where you can reach a real person via phone, email, or text. We also have an operations crew that works around the clock to respond to any issues, even when we're out of service between midnight and 5 a.m. God forbid anything happens, we have trained people at the ready to dispatch immediately. And another differentiating feature is not only do we monitor the bad behavior, and again, that's always an iterative process. It would be foolish for me to stand in front of you guys who know better than anybody how difficult it is to get people acting correctly, particularly where transportation is concerned. But we're doing a lot on our tech and product side and in other ways, which I'll get to a bit later, but we will actually remove people from our platform. We warn people, people make honest mistakes, but there is a point where you're off our platform, which I will get to. Additionally, we are committed to transportation access, which is a benefit of having dockless transportation is we don't have to wait to get to historically underserved areas. So we're able to go to the Bronx fairly early in our lifetime and serve areas that, again, are historically underserved. We also have an access program where we give 50% discount to anybody, no matter where you live, on any form of public assistance, local, state, or federal. You would also be eligible for a free motorcycle helmet. Those can be expensive. We also, for people who are not members of our access program, offer them for purchase on our website at a discounted price, I believe of about $35, which is pretty cheap. All things considered, we make no money off of that. We offer 40% discount to veterans and active duty military. And to date, this may even be a little outdated, our access program individually have saved participants over $500,000. So on to safety and user accountability initiatives. And this, like I mentioned a couple of times before, is an iterative process. There's not, we're doing all we can, but don't take this to be all we are doing and all we are doing ever. We know, just like DOT knows, that this is something that needs to be constantly monitored as technology improves and gets better. We too will get better as we learn more. But just to date, want to go through some of the stuff that we've enacted. So we worked with a behavioral science organization to come up with a comprehensive safety training, which is really aimed, it's like a quiz, but it's aimed at retaining the information. And so we include, generally the operations of the moped, but the helmet requirements, riding with a minor, which is, it's baffling, but it is actually legal in New York City, which makes it somewhat challenging, particularly for people who are more experienced riders. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to do this, but it is very much against our rules. So we need to be very specific on that because it is legal under New York City state law. And we go through things like riding on sidewalks, green spaces, bike lanes, running stop signs, red lights. And, you know, that is like what everybody should know who has a driver's license. We reiterate it, but we also inform the users that there are consequences to these violations, specifically outside of NYPD, you know, that Revel takes on. And so we enacted this in September of last year, but all of our riders have taken it because we have required that everyone who has ever signed up for Revel, in order to have re-accessed our platform in September, had to take this training. Additionally, we have also now require a helmet selfie before every ride. So in order to start your ride, you must take a picture of yourself, and if you have a passenger, that person as well, with the helmet on, and attest to wearing the helmet through the ride. And you know, that is a suspendable offense. So again, not only does it give us the evidence we need to make sure people have put on this helmet, but it gives several checkpoints where people have to really think. I'm putting this helmet on, I'm fastening it, I'm taking the picture. And I think overall, we have definitely seen greater compliance. I mean, it's been a tremendous difference. Additionally, we have in-person lessons available 7 days a week. They're often available in every borough, but there is at least a lesson going on, you know, every day. If not every borough, low demand times, you can find one. And it also includes ride credit. I think it's about $65. So if you've come take a lesson, that's $65 in riding that you can use. We are also, you know, working with experts and just internally with our project engineering team, you know, for better educational tools that will pop up from time to time, you know, lend themselves to having this information sink in better, but are also accessible on our app at any time. And these are things that, you know, we've heard through giving in-person lessons, you know, are really helpful tips, and we've gotten feedback of that. So in addition to this, we also monitor the violations. And so again, the critical difference, we monitor them and we act on them. And so there are the things that I mentioned, like the helmet selfie that we can enforce, but we've also developed on our tech and data side, automatic alerts for green spaces and one-way streets. So GPS technology allows us to know, you know, it's much easier in an area like, say, Central Park, for example, to see that there is a moped there. GPS is not always reliable. For example, in a bike lane, if there is a traffic lane and a bike lane, it's too close for it to be reasonably accurate that somebody is traveling that bike lane. But, you know, we're looking for, obviously technology will get better, but we're looking for other things. Like, for example, we recently put on the Manhattan Bridge entrance, you know, to the bike lane. It is a big splotch, an automatic alert. So we know if somebody is there, they're not supposed to be there, they will be on the bridge. So we're looking for that, but again, it's an iterative process. In addition to the automatic alerts and the selfies, we have our community reporting tool, which I think many of you are familiar with. We do receive them in your area, in your community. And so then after we receive these, or we get these alerts, riders will receive an email, a push notification. So, you know, the things that just pop up on your phone, and then an in-app. So when you access the Revel app, it will pop up again to inform you of the violation you committed. And some of our violations that are, you know, less egregious may have a warning, or not necessarily less egregious, but if we don't see reckless riding, hey, you may have not known that we had this issue with Prospect Park last year. It was open to vehicles at one point, then it wasn't. But there is a difference between, you know, very egregious riding and somebody's dipped in and out. So we try, not to cut off access to everybody unless we're clear there's an infraction that is particularly not accidental. But we also will remove people immediately for reckless riding. If there is a warning and another infraction, we most likely will just remove them from the platform, but in less dangerous situations, we may give a second warning, 7-day suspension, and then obviously a third time would be a full suspension. And that's something that we really pride ourselves because no one else is really doing it. Our finance team doesn't love it to kick the riders off, but it's something we do and that we're committed to always do. And as our technology, it's obviously our goal to kick people off of our platform, but the more things we can detect, we can prevent. So if we're going to see you doing something, and if you don't care if NYPD sees you, maybe you just want access. So we're hoping to get better, to get really the responsible riders stay on the service and hopefully change some behavior if that is possible. Now, 2021 has been interesting. We were all things moped. I had to refresh myself on our moped details. It's kind of been a while. We are very much expanding our business. It doesn't mean removing resources from mopeds and the clean and safe operation of our mopeds and the technology we're putting behind it. But we have been able to expand into a few other things, our e-bike membership. So this is not like our mopeds in that it is a subscription service. If you're thinking about an e-bike, you don't want to buy an e-bike, you can rent it for $99 a month, and it's a concierge service where our employees will deliver it, we'll pick it up, and if you have a flat or have any other maintenance issues, we will take care of it for you. So it's a pretty good deal, I have to say. And we have a high rate of rentals now. We assume as the weather gets bad, there may be less of a demand, but people seem pretty pleased with the service so far. The sort of bigger avenue that we've gone into away from micromobility, that was really our electric vehicle infrastructure and our rideshare. I'll give you the details briefly about both, but just take a step back and give you guys the context. EV charging, transitioning to EVs, there's this chicken and the egg issue where it is expensive to run a charging hub. And there is not a lot of demand in New York City, but there won't be demand in New York City if there's no EV charging, particularly because, fewer of us have garages and parking spots that can accommodate that as compared to the suburbs. And so really our electric vehicle charging infrastructure goes hand in hand with our rideshare. So because we have a built-in guaranteed user of our chargers, which is our electric rideshare fleet, it makes, a lot of companies don't want to make an investment. It's quite expensive. It's time consuming. It's difficult in New York to even find locations where you can have a charging hub. But because we have a built-in fleet to make it economical, we are able to do this now. And our hope is that this accelerates, I guess, the egg or the chicken part of this equation, and it will actually make electric vehicle ownership feasible. In Brooklyn, there's probably Brooklyn and Queens, there's each, aside from the airports, one fast charger in each borough. It's really accessible. It's frequently broken, and there's just one. Someone can be there when you get there. We have 25. We unveiled our first one at the historic Pfizer building in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. It has 25 DC fast chargers. It's the largest fast charging depot in the Americas. And although our rideshare fleet are Teslas, this will charge any type of electric vehicle, and there is no paywall. So it is open to the public 24/7. And you do not frequently, in a parking garage, you'll have to pay to enter the parking garage. And on top of that, the charging here, that is free. We just charge for the actual charging. And we're currently scoping locations throughout the city. It is really difficult. We're working hand in hand with Con Ed, we were able to do this well and relatively quickly, but, you know, upgrading the power, all of the kind of hurdles that go into this are quite difficult. So we're looking, you know, for some of the lower hanging fruit that it's still a challenge, but locations that can accommodate us now, but also with Con Ed on, you know, ways to kind of tee things up for the future. And so this is level 3 fast charging. It's about 100 miles in under 20 minutes, universally compatible. It has generated green jobs. We do have a fleet service. You charge your own vehicle, it's self-service, but we do have people on site who are maintaining our rideshare fleet. And we do also have that 24/7 access, so people are there. And it's market rate for charging. And again, no paywalls or hidden fees. And hopefully in the next month or so, we should have more information about our next one, if not 2 charging hubs that if they're not as big as 25, I would say they'd be as big as 10, because again, a common complaint of people is if you just have one charger somewhere, you know, there's always a line for it. It doesn't actually, the ease people need to charge isn't there. Bring us to Revel Rideshare. As I mentioned, professional employee drivers, and the entire fleet are Teslas. And they are our vehicles. We maintain them, we power them, we are responsible for them. The driver just shows up. They also do not park curbside. They park when they're not in use at that Pfizer site. So, you know, they're not taking up any street parking. We also, in addition to understanding there's a demand to be an employee driver, a common complaint of Uber Lyft drivers are you can't talk to anyone. You know, it's a church and state. There's not a lot of resources to help the drivers when they need it. We have a dedicated driver ops team. Our former head of customer service is now running this team. So there is someone to talk to. And additionally, you know, many people like the model, the kind of independent contractor model, and we're definitely, there's a space for everybody, but for those drivers that want to be compensated, you know, when they have to go to TLC to renew their license or they get a flat tire, they just have that support from the company. Additionally, we're able to do training. So we're able to train on many things. For example, hearing impaired riders, vision impaired riders, more of a human approach to getting picked up. All of our vehicles have child seats in them. And we're also able to monitor the driving. It's for the protection of the driver, but also we have a system in place that, you know, gives us a driver score basically. So, you know, instances of hard braking, things that may in and of themselves not be so egregious, but, you know, we see patterns and changes. And so that our driver's ops teams can intervene early with the driver. Hey, you know, you got to like go easy on the brake, whatever it is. Ideally to address this behavior before, you know, obviously it's too late. And yeah, our Teslas have the ability to move up to 5 passengers. We're doing all the COVID protocol, as you might imagine. And we have launched as of August 2nd. We're currently covering 59th Street and below in Manhattan. And the limits of this are that we only have 50 vehicles, but that the charging infrastructure. So as we expand, we need to ensure that we have the infrastructure to support our expansion. But I should also say, if it were to be a concern, which I could see it being to this group, because our drivers are employees, the vehicles are ours, our incentives are exactly the opposite of Uber and Lyft. So for the current players in the market, blanketing the streets with as many cars as they can, just so that you get, and I may get like a 3 to 5 minute wait for a car. And so if a driver has picks up 2 passengers in the span of 8 hours, it costs those companies nothing. But it does cost, the person driving a lot. So for us, there's no benefit to flooding the streets if there is not demand. So we are starting small with just the service area, with just these vehicles, and we will adjust accordingly. And so even if you didn't believe we were a great, responsible company, just to be clear, it is, our incentives are completely aligned really with the city, because we would just go out of business, right? We're not that rich of a company that we can just afford to do that. We do hope to displace a lot of Uber and Lyft trips, but not the drivers. We'd love to have them come drive for us. But we do think, we are sensitive. I know I saw congestion pricing is on your docket. Like, we are certainly sensitive to the issues of congestion, but we think our model is most likely actually to big picture address those. So sure, you guys are sick of hearing from me. Thank you. This is just a slight overview, but definitely can talk more at any point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Haley, can I ask you one question? Does Revel have the technology whereby at any given moment where each and every one of your bikes is?
Yes, there are caveats. So if there could be a situation where a bike is damaged and the GPS is off. Generally, I mean, that's not typical, and we can track it down based on where it was before, but for the most part, yes. I mean,
So
for overwhelmingly most part, yes.
So if somebody saw a Revel operating in an unsafe manner, we could call and say, we've just
Absolutely.
seen one in the vicinity of, and you would know which bike that was and who rented it.
Yeah, we would have to track it down, and that probably would be difficult to do through a community reporting tool. But and now, Howard, you have my information, and Carol will have a replacement soon. But we reach out to us anytime, and we can trace that stuff back. For the most part, there could be situations where we wouldn't be able to, but we have done this before. We do this when people call.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I think some hands are up. I don't want to.
Okay, I see the hands. Ken.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I think overall, I'm very impressed with your concern for safety and the professionalism and your concern for workers also. I had 4 questions. I don't know, maybe I'll ask them all and maybe you'll remember at least some of them. One of them is, I saw a Revel, I was biking on the Manhattan Bridge on Saturday, and I was passed by a Revel going the other direction. And I was surprised for 2 reasons. I thought they weren't allowed even to go from borough to borough, or maybe that's changed. And also they're on the bike path. So I was wondering what would be the consequences, and when somebody gets thrown off the system, is that like a lifetime expulsion? So those are two questions.
Yeah, so most recently, we now, for the Manhattan Bridge, are able to detect that the moped is getting on. They're absolutely not supposed to be there. And, we've been working, so having received complaints, I wouldn't say that many, but we have alerted our riders. So we have in-app notifications to remind people they're not permissible in bike lanes, period. So they absolutely shouldn't be there. For an infraction of that type, most likely a violation would be issued. I mean, if there's an erratic driving pattern, not, but that's a different story. But they would be warned, reminded they cannot go over these bridges. And then if there was another infraction of this type, it wouldn't necessarily have to be on the bridge itself. They would be suspended from our platform because there would really be no excuse for that. So most likely, I can't imagine why not, that person would have received a warning for that violation. But we are aware, and we are now focusing on the bike paths of these bridges.
And if they do get suspended or expelled, can they reapply like a year later?
No, to date, they cannot. So we say suspend actually just because, like, if we they have to be in our system so that we know that they cannot be in our system. But yeah, so as of now, we've really just want to keep bad actors off the platform. So it is a permanent suspension.
Okay, and when you mentioned the free helmets, I thought helmets came with the mopeds.
They do, but some people do not like to share helmets. And that has been reported. I mean, it is baffling to me that then you just wouldn't ride the moped as opposed to riding one without the helmet. But, you know, we have gotten feedback that people, you know, think it's dirty. I think in the earlier days of COVID, people were freaked out. So we're just giving this as another option that is at cost. So it doesn't, we're not making a profit off of it. But if people feel that way, but they do want to use our service, as opposed to putting on their bike helmet or not wearing a helmet, they have access, you know, to one. And it's free for people who are part of our access program on public assistance. But for everybody else, again, it's at cost. And I think it's about $35, maybe $40.
That's pretty good. And finally, do you have any data on how many car trips your various devices have replaced, or maybe just the mopeds?
Yeah, well, we have emissions related. I will have to get back to you though on the latest data, particularly with our newer products that are just launched this year. But I'll definitely ask our data team about that. We should.
It'd be cool to get them. Thanks.
Haley, one more question. From what you just told Ken, interborough trips are prohibited?
Not necessarily.
Not if you're on one of those streets from Brooklyn to Queens, there's no bridge involved.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, so a lot of the crossings, the speed limits are high. They're not permitted, but there are some bridges that are lower speed bridges. But generally we find, you know, Bronx and Manhattan fleets, you know, because we know where the mopeds are. Well, it's kind of like a Manhattan Bronx fleet and a Brooklyn Queens. So that's the intermingling that we'll see.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Hi, Haley. Thanks so much for taking time out. And we actually had met with Revel. I think this committee remembers going on 2 years ago now. That was before the unfortunate tragedy of the Channel 2 reporter. Obviously, safety is our #1 concern on the board. My question is really about your business model and the data. You know, I think that a lot of these new companies that are coming in addition to being safe, are also, I saw your heat map of sort of where you are throughout New York City right now. Is that information being shared with city planners in New York? Is it being sold? How are you?
It's not being.
Okay.
It is not. It's not being sold. We in all the cities we operate that we're under agreement, we share data, but also even in New York City, you know, we meet with New York City DOT at least monthly, and we do share monthly data. We have a list of all the items we share, so they get that directly from us. But
yeah, I just think that it's something that could be really useful for city planning purposes and for community boards to know where the scooters are traveling, how they're being used, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, when we have received requests from the Department of City Planning and share everything, we could do it if there is a desire to do it every month like we do with DOT.
Yeah, and that leads into my just second brief question about congestion pricing is, you know, I think most of the people on this committee support the idea of congestion pricing, and it impacts our neighborhood, below 60th Street in particular, but entirely of Manhattan. What are your long-term plans on how you see Revel adapting to that new world?
I mean, I think we'll have to. And I think that's okay. I think less congestion is good for everybody. Yeah, I mean, I think.
So do you see a world where Revel would have more vehicles on the road during congestion pricing, given that cars potentially won't be coming into the city, or?
I guess it would depend. I don't think we would necessarily have more cars on the road. I think we would pay whatever the congestion pricing cost would be. I mean, so I'm not trying to answer the question, but to say where our initial launch service area where we launched had a lot to do with COVID and, people not taking as reliable trips, except for, in this area. So our goal is to very quickly move outward and to definitely not, I don't see a world where we don't expand our service area before we put any more vehicles in it. And in fact, we most likely will expand the service area before we put more vehicles in it. It's just been our first month or so of operation, but I think our goal is certainly not to congest the CBD. It may be to displace some gas guzzling other company ride hail trips with our trips.
Right. Are you doing stuff to get people to, like last mile, sort of getting people to subways, getting people to, taking a ride for a little bit of time, but I guess that's my final.
I think that's not where we're focused on. That's
okay.
where, we would say the bikes and the walking and the mopeds. And it hasn't been our experience. This is just anecdotally that people are currently using it for that. So that isn't not something that we are focused on. The longer the trip, the better. So not to add additional vehicles for, 10-minute trip.
Okay, I know a lot of other people have questions. I just hope you'll keep prioritizing all classes of New Yorkers and not just the privileged few who can put a credit card in and go zoom around the city. Thanks.
Doug, and then Bill Ortiz.
Sorry,
Doug?
Who did you call? Okay, thank you. Ellie, thank you very much for being here today. I thought your presentation was very professional and very polished. And I am not going to shoot the messenger, but I want to tell you a couple of things. I'm a Revel member. I did it mostly to do research, quite frankly, because I'm on this committee. I find it, it's fun, invigorating. It's exciting, a little bit scary, to be honest with you, given the environment we're in. I am concerned, and I took the safety video. Now, you described it as a comprehensive safety training. I thoroughly disagree with that categorization. I think it's a decent video. It's a video, and you can skip through it and not really watch it. I know it's a little bit participatory, but I've taken flight training, flying an airplane. That's comprehensive training. There's nothing much comprehensive about it. Now, the presumption is that you have drivers, licensed drivers, and presumably they've already taken an exam with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So I'm going to lead into a couple of questions. Number one, I want to know, when everybody needs to have a driver's license to be one of your members, do you have a way of checking someone's driver's records? In other words, obviously if their driver's license is suspended, but if they're known as kind of a bad driver, they have a lot of points on their license, is that taken into consideration? And I have a couple of quick other questions.
It is not currently, the validity of the license is, but currently I don't believe that we are doing that if they're legally permitted to drive. Clearly, like driving history, if you've driven for us, so we have your history, that's like erratic ride patterns and any sort of crash obviously. But no, we don't have the individual rider's driver history.
Right. Thank you for that. And the other, I mean, listen, I know that your intentions are good, and but you know, you made a little joke, and and those who know me, I know I love to joke, but you said that your finance team doesn't really like when you suspend membership. Let me ask and suggest that you train your finance team to love when you suspend bad members, because you're saving potentially people's lives. So you don't want anyone injured or killed on your watch, and your finance team doesn't want to be shut down like the city shut you down before. So
Absolutely.
I know it was a joke, but I was slightly offended by it because
I
that means money is
certainly,
number one, right? And
no, well, I certainly apologize, because our finance team, I will tell you, you can ask anyone here, does not run the company. There's the first hire regulatory government person. So I apologize for the bad joke, but I cannot express how strongly that anybody where the profit is, you know, the absolute bottom line at any cost is not run this company, is not in any position. I meant it in jest, and I apologize.
I appreciate that, and I know it was a joke, but I did want to just emphasize the point that safety always has to come before money, and
absolutely
and if safety is not, it's a bad business model anyway, because then your company is toast, right? So I would love to see you guys do a better job at enforcing Revel mopeds on bike paths in the park. Do you have the technology? Do you have a kill switch where you can disable a rider if you see them in Central Park, or is that not it's too dangerous to do?
It's dangerous. I think we do have something where if like a moped is stopped for a certain period of time, it will shut off. But you know, if someone's sitting in traffic, I can't remember. I believe it's 8 minutes, which is obviously a very long time. But we definitely can't stop the ride. We can't. I know scooter companies talk about doing this with the kick scooters, but we can't slow the ride. It's just too dangerous, and the issues with telematics and with the problems with the technology would not make it a responsied thing.
I understand. And my last and final comment is a compliment, because I do really appreciate you being here. And I had a very positive experience. I saw a bad Revel rider, let's just say, doing several things that I thought was pretty egregious. Went through a red light, no helmet, went the wrong way on West 74th Street. I was lucky enough to snap a picture of the vehicle with the driver without a helmet, and the perspective of the picture showed that they were going the wrong way on a one-way street. I sent it to Revel, and you guys were very responsive, and you sent me a message back saying that that rider was suspended. And I appreciate that. So that was all within maybe a 24-hour period, and I thank you for that.
Okay.
Great news. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Hi, can you hear me? Just making sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I thought it was actually really great. It's very thorough. I have more of a request, or maybe I guess it's a question, but as you can tell, safety is all of our concerns, our biggest concerns here. And when I talk to colleagues at work or family members about Revel, it's still this there's this gray area. They don't really get it. They don't understand what they can do. As a matter of fact, I actually forgot that you can't go between boroughs. You can't leave Manhattan. A lot of my colleagues live in Brooklyn.
You can.
Oh, you can.
As long as it's lawful, as long as you're taking a lawful route.
Okay, my apologies. So my comment or question is, I think it'd be very effective if Revel uses advertisements, whether subway advertisements or whatever, that showcase best practice. So similarly to what New York City did over the past year and a half with COVID and face masks, it showed us best practice, and it empowered all of New Yorkers to really kind of point to someone, hey, put your mask back up, put it on properly. I think that's something that would really help the company, because I think the younger generations are really into companies that are very proactive. And especially since your company is environmentally conscious, I think having advertisements like that would be very helpful.
Can I just add, so we at times we'll have a series on Link NYC. Maybe that's not the best place. Would you say that, subway ads would be the premier location? If you have any insight into that.
I would recommend that because I'll be honest with you, most of the new applications that I've learned is just sitting on the subway for 25 minutes and reading the same advertisement every 5 seconds. So it sticks with you. So that's my recommendation. Subway advertisements, I think, is the #1 way to go. Lots of people use it. And listen, and I think that's your market. I don't know if Andrew would like hearing this, but I take the train to work, but I city bike home every day. So I use both. I like the exercise and I trust MTA. Maybe one day I'll do Revel. Not sure yet if city bike one day no longer works for me, but I take both. And I think that's your audience, and even people who will never use Revel, it'll be great for them to learn what's legal and what's not legal, and for us to be proactive and doing like what Doug did and taking pictures and sending it to you guys.
I take that back.
So if we're going to have Revel advertising in the subway, does that mean the MTA can advertise in the Revel space?
I don't see why not.
They've never asked, but
Okay, Rich Robbins, please.
Great, thank you. And I want to echo what others say, and thank you for being here. I know it's not easy coming to community boards, especially on the Upper West Side. And you guys do have a reputation as being the good guys, and things like this that earn that despite it not being easy. A few questions. One is on removal. You talked a great game about removal, but it was all in the abstract. Curious for specifics. How many riders have you removed? What is the threshold for removal? Are camera violations, you said that red light or speeding violations go through you to the rider. Are those considered for removal? How many rides in Central Park or Riverside Park does it take to get removed? And do you have any people doing actual enforcement, such as watching bike lanes to make sure that your bikes aren't in the bike lanes? So that's one area of questions. And I'm going to put all this in chat because I know it's a number of variations on the theme. Second is with crash data. How many collisions have there been with pedestrians, and how many crashes have there been with Revel bikes in the Upper West Side? Third, on the ride share, I love the idea that since your drivers are employees, they have a different incentive structure. And to what Doug was saying, if safety is a higher priority than expediency, you can compensate them based on safety, not on tips. I'm wondering.
Which we do both. I mean, in
Great.
salary, tips, and bonuses for safety scores, and duration of maintaining the safety score.
Awesome. And then my last question is just, I'm curious if there are balancing issues, but mostly concerned about removal and crash data. And I just put all my sub questions in chat.
So I am looking at them, and I'm also going to copy and paste them because I definitely do not have the answers on the crash data, the ride share. I'll have to get back to you, which I will. We reported this information. We can certainly do that. Camera violations are interesting. So because camera violations go to the person that owns the vehicle, we can see them. So then they would be subject to, that sort of suspension because we know that they've ran a light because we have photographic evidence. I think it's more difficult if somebody incurs a speeding or some kind of moving violation by a police officer. We won't have a record because it just goes to the driver. But we are able, it's not just that we just pass. So with parking, we pass it down. It's not just passing it down. It's a suspension. At a minimum, I actually can't remember exactly there. I believe there has to be some warning structure for, I don't mean just blowing past the light, but something, but we can address that. And it's actually very helpful for us. There should be the removal for riding in the parks as part of our automatic alerts. Both of those parks, Central Park and Riverside Park, are geo-fenced. We know, unless there's an erratic driving pattern, someone just kind of went in, they didn't know, coming back out, they may get a warning. Obviously, if it's anything more than that, they would be suspended. And our auto alert for
so that is the first offense?
I believe it's a warning, but if there is like if there's an erratic pattern where it's not just like someone's went in and they don't realize, but you're off you're not even on the street, you're like, in the woods or something. That stuff we can see through, the footprint that the ride is made. But if it is less of an egregious and potentially an education effort, that is where people get alerted through the email, through the in-app notification, and the push notification. And they would get a warning and then a suspension. And then in terms of watching, to be perfectly honest, we did consider, I'm sorry, I'm just copying this to get it back to you later, but we did consider this, but we're not trained enforcement agents, and just out of like sort of pride in the company, even myself, I'd scream at people, riding in a bike lane or that. I still do it, but we had like a couple of cases of kind of contentious, of escalations with angry riders, and the decision was made that I'm just not comfortable putting our employees at risk, no matter who they are. They're just not trained to get into these kind of interactions. Even we had an employee who's just taking a picture of a rider and then gets confronted by the rider. We do, work with NYPD. We meet with the precincts often. But as far as putting, our employees, and we actually bulk, I think it may even be the majority of community reports we receive are from our own employees, so that we are doing that. But actually putting people in that position personally is something that we don't do. And I don't really see us doing, but to the extent that NYPD, has advice and things to do, and we are in touch, we'll certainly do them anything to make their jobs easier as well.
Great, thank you again.
Respect.
Barbara?
Thank you. I have a follow-up question also having to do with safety. So many of us are concerned about here. I did not watch your video like my colleague Doug did, but I'm wondering if you could share that with us, because there seem to be so many people who are making violations. I see rebels in Riverside Park almost routinely, and they're on the promenade, they're on the grass, and where they absolutely shouldn't be. I mean, they're everywhere, and they're all over our pathways in Central Park as well. You mentioned that you do monitor looking for bad actors, and I'm wondering how many people you have who actually monitor, do that monitoring.
Yeah, I mean, we have, so for the green spaces, we have these auto alerts, so they're pinged on the GPS, and we have our and the community reports that sort of gets automated, and then we have like our live people, because GPS can be imperfect, actually just verifying. So for a warning, we might just give a warning, but before we're officially suspending someone, if someone look at it, I think, I guess it's our customer service department, but it's more that we've automated it to the extent that we can take in more of these. We can address them in real time fairly quickly. It's almost immediate for many of these cases where we're able to enforce. It may take a little longer depending on staffing and other customer service responsibilities, but not by the magnitude of days.
Can you tell me, you may not want to answer this and I can understand if you don't, but how many suspensions do you have in a month, for instance?
I legitimately can't answer that for just because I don't know, but we do give this information to DOT. So in the data that I can come back with that was requested, can add that to the list.
Well, I do think it could go a long way if you don't want to share the video with us, which
no, absolutely, there's no issue in doing that.
Oh, okay, that would be great. But based on what Doug said, strengthening that video could go a long way. I mean, letting people know in no uncertain terms and really stressing it, because safety is everything.
Yeah, we'll absolutely send it. And I don't know, when Doug saw the video, we have actually iterated on it since we first incorporated it last fall. So I'm sure it's very possible. I haven't even watched it recently. It may not address everything. I'll send you our most recent video and suggestions. I mean, we talk to DOT all the time. It was a lot of feedback from DOT that led to how we strengthened it. There's always more to do. So we will send you the latest version and are happy to get your feedback.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions from anyone? We've it went on a little longer than I expected. So if there are no further questions.
Thank you, Haley. It was very
Yeah,
instructive.
that was great. It was really helpful. You gave us a lot of information and it's very helpful.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm happy. I was a little bit nervous, I have to be honest, but I will circle back with you guys and with this information and the video and the data. Howard, I could contact you, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Haley.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thanks.
Colleen, DOT updates. Colleen?
I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, great. Updates.
I had to find that unmute button. So the last time we spoke, Howard, you had sent me and emailed me a few of resolutions that you wanted updates about. So let's see, the Central Park transfers, that was a resolution that was issued on 2/2/20. That one is it's in review. We should have a response shortly about that. I sent a reminder to my colleagues in our bike division to follow up with them. So I know they're working with the Conservancy on this. They're also working with NYPD on this. The other one is the crosstown bike lane on 72nd Street. So that is in review status. As you know, with requests for the bike lanes, we have to do our analysis and we have to reach out to stakeholders and we have to look at traffic stats. So that is actually in review stage. And I will keep you posted on that one. The other one is the resolution concerning daylighting. In this one, Borough Commissioner Pinkar is discussing with the higher ups. So I will follow up with him early next week to see what the outcome is with this one as well. And the westbound cyclist on West 100th Street. So that again is still in review stage. I'm hoping that we will have something more solid that we can share with the community board in terms of a presentation by early next year. So that's the timeline that I have for that one.
Okay, anything else? Oh,
yeah, Colleen, there was some requests on 79th between Columbus and Amsterdam, signage on 79th approaching Amsterdam, going eastbound, alerting motorists that you must go south at Columbus. So if you want to go north, you should turn at Amsterdam. That the fact that it was a school zone and that we were going to do something with the treatments of the eastbound lanes there because that's where there's some speeding. Has any progress been made on any of those?
Let me follow up about that one. I can get back to you with that one tomorrow, Andrew.
Thanks.
And I don't recall if the light at 65th and Central Park West, when you approach that light from the north, you're heading south. There was supposed to be a change of the signaling there to prevent a mixing of pedestrians, bikers, and cars all in that one intersection. The left-hand turn, it was supposed to be a red left-hand turn signal. Did that get corrected, Colleen?
I will confirm with signals.
Okay, because that was really hazardous. Because again, the cars were accelerating particularly quickly to beat the northbound traffic, going right into a crosswalk loaded with pedestrians, tourists, bikers. It was
there had to be an
intersection.
advanced green and a red no turn signal installed there.
Yeah, that was really hazardous.
Again, please remind me. It's
65th and Central Park West. It's when you're for the cars trying to make a left turn into the transverse.
I will follow up about that tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Andrew, you're up.
Okay, so
I had a
congestion
question
pricing.
for
Oh.
Colleen.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I can.
Yeah, two things. One on 72nd Street. I think you said the same thing, that it was in review stage about a year ago. So I'm wondering, is it further along in the review stage? Can you give us
I
any?
don't think it's further along in the review stage. I'm hoping that we'll have something to come to share with the community board early next year.
Okay, well, that,
Yeah.
Colleen, before you go, can you
not
give
doing
us an update on the status of the rotunda reconstruction work?
Yes. Yes. I know we're
When
working.
that's
I
likely
had
to
one
start?
other question too.
Okay, Ken, I'm here.
Okay, 86th and Central Park West, where the cyclist was killed. I know that you filled that small pothole, and I thank you for that. Are any other changes being planned there to prevent a driver turning right from running over a cyclist, which could easily happen again?
I know whenever there's a fatality, our safety division go out there, they look at the intersection to make sure that the signals are working, as well as the markings and the signage are all in place. I would have to request a copy of the crash report to see really what happened there. I have not heard of any changes planned for that particular location. I really don't know much about what happened with the crash at that location. You know, as I mentioned, I would have to obtain a copy of the crash report, and I would have to share with my colleagues and see if they have anything planned for that location.
Does that mean that DOT hasn't looked at the crash report?
I'm not saying that they haven't. I'm saying I have not.
Mm-hmm. So,
You know, it could be that our traffic planning division have looked at it. I have to follow up with them.
okay.
And this is 86 in Central Park West.
Yeah,
I can find out for you, Ken.
great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Andrew?
Okay, congestion pricing.
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Colleen, thank you for joining us. We're coming off a really tragic weekend where there were 2 fatalities on the Upper West Side. I know it's real early, but I'm wondering if you have any information and if like what the process is now for just seeing what happened and trying to avoid similar incidents in the future.
You know, again, when there's a fatality, we have our safety team that would go out there and take a look at the location. I would have to follow up with them to see what recommendations were made. What's the other location where there was a fatality? You mentioned there are 2 in the Upper West Side.
I believe both were on Amsterdam. One was a cyclist, I believe at 97th Street. Ken, correct me if I'm wrong. The other was an elderly pedestrian, I believe near Amsterdam in the 60s.
And that's 97 in Amsterdam?
I thought it was 99th. Or Mike.
Ken, do you have the exact addresses?
I don't need the exact addresses as long as I have the intersection. I'll follow up with my colleagues and I'll let you know what actions were taken or if there are any mitigating safety improvements that we can look at to improve at that location. I'll follow up with the community board. I'll let you know.
Andrew?
Are we sure there's no other questions for Colleen? Okay, hearing none. The next phase of the procedure that the MTA must go through to get congestion pricing approved by the feds in Washington are the public hearings. They start next week. September 23rd will start the hearing for the actual congestion zone, 60th Street to the Battery. And October 6th is the parts of Manhattan that immediately are adjacent to the congestion zone, Upper East and Upper West Sides. Both of those hearings go from 6 to 8 p.m. There are also there's a total of 10 of those, and then there's 3 environmental justice hearings. once these hearings are all, and by the way, this is 28 counties and 22 million people that will be reached out to, believe it or not. Hopefully they will not all respond, but the MTA will compile all of that data and get it to the Federal Highway Administration, where we hope will be a quick process, especially since Secretary Buttigieg has spoken favorably in terms of our congestion pricing initiative. Obviously, it's going to be environmentally friendly. It's going to get a lot of cars off the street and put a lot of money into the MTA's capital program, much of which now will focus on getting stations made accessible and resiliency due to the 100-year storms we're having every few years now, as it appears. So this money is really important. We may want to submit a statement. You don't actually have to speak in the geographic location or refer to the geographic location of that particular hearing. For instance, an Orange County resident could speak at the Manhattan hearings and speak about their concerns. So there may be some duplicate speakers at these hearings, but we may want to speak at one of these, perhaps the October 6th one, which is our district and the Upper East Side. But the process is moving forward. Governor Hochul has spoken favorably about this. The legislature appears already on board. And of course, our two senators are pushing this. Senator Schumer has been a terrific asset in the move to get congestion pricing forward. So we look forward to the hearings and hearing what people have to say. The Traffic Mobility Review Panel has not yet been assembled. In fact, only the mayor has named a person to it. The MTA has not. And once they are assembled, they can talk about pricing, exemptions, and all of that sort of stuff. I am sure the exemptions and the pricing will have a lot to do with the public hearings coming up. But the process is beginning, and it's beginning next week. You can go to the MTA's website and log in if you'd like to speak. And you can see all the times. I have them if anybody needs me to forward it to them. But the process is proceeding, so we're hopeful.
Andrew, what about the 16-month timeframe? That is, people
that was,
think
I
it'll take
think,
that long?
it may not take that long. It's up to the Federal Highway Administration to see how fast. As you know, the previous administration put this whole thing on hold. This one is allowing it to move forward. And if I take Secretary Buttigieg for his word, I think they would like to see this move forward. I think this will be instructive for the whole country, actually.
I thought
think
it was the state that was saying it would take 16 months.
Yeah, it may. I think they were doing that to be safe, much as McKinsey Company said we wouldn't get our subway ridership back to 90% of what it had been pre-pandemic until 2024. And last Friday, we had 2.7 million. So we're getting much closer, much faster. I hope that'll be the case with congestion pricing.
I know several of us have our hands up. Rich, I'm not sure if you had yours up before mine, but I just would like to make the case for us to try to do as much public information about these congestion pricing meetings as possible from the board. And however we can do that, Michelle, through the board office, through social media, through other things. I think part of our jobs is not to weigh in on our opinions, but to spread the information. I think a lot of people don't know this is happening, and they're happening very quickly. So if we can do anything to help with that, I'd certainly be happy to help.
I can send Michelle the schedule of the 15 hearings. Well, excuse me, 13 hearings, and it can be posted on CB7's website for those that would like to know, and the link to speak or register to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew.
Sure.
Anything else on this?
Are there hands up? I can't see.
Yeah, there are no other hands up. Why don't we talk about restaurant seating? I wasn't in the meeting where that was discussed and the resolution was proposed. Andrew, were you there?
I was there.
Oh, could you
Are you
give a
talking
brief
about
report?
the land use committee?
Yeah, can you give a brief report on that? Thanks.
Yeah, you're talking about the proposed text change?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Richard and Jeanette led a spirited discussion of the proposed text change. Andrew Ridgey from the Restaurant Association was, of course, there to represent restaurants. This text change puts sidewalk cafes, takes it out of what was DCP and another agency and gives it to DOT. That was discussed pretty thoroughly, whether that was a good thing with all the DOT has to deal with. It also spoke about in-street restaurant seating. Many people were not in favor of a massive expansion of that. This text change would have taken away the community board's options to speak on the size of cafes, the style of cafes, where in the street and how big they should be, and the noise level at some of these places. I mean, it meant well, but the way it was phrased, it took away the community. You didn't see the new language. You only saw what it was going to replace. And that led Richard and Jeanette to style a resolution that said, while we believe some of these things are good, we don't believe taking the community board's option away to comment on these things, even if there's a small gap between when the new language is put up and we vote on it, or when the old language expires. So there was a lot of discussion about what this meant for restaurants. Richard even put text. I mean, everybody can see the resolution, I'm sure, that was passed by the board, that this is in no way meant to hurt restaurants who we believe are struggling and need extra help. But there has to be some review by the community boards of all of these things. It also allowed sidewalk cafes to be erected in parts of the city that don't have any, like Eastern Queens has been forbidden from having these. So they would get the ability to have cafes, Northern Bronx, parts of Brooklyn that never had the ability to put cafes. Some of that stuff is good, but you got to have community boards and community review of these things. And that would be taken away for a period of time. And that was the gist of Richard's comments.
Okay, I just, again, that was voted on at the full board meeting. I just thought for the people who are attending tonight's meeting, some background would be useful. Moving on to the next item.
Wait, I had a question. I mean, I wanted to say something about that, please.
Great.
I agree with Andrew's assessment of that. I watched the whole thing on YouTube, and it was very interesting. But my concern with that, and I'd love this committee to take it up at some point if there's anything at all that we can do, and that is that almost every single one of these structures that are in the street are in violation in one way or another. I was in one. I've actually, I have to admit, I've been to very few. I've not really supported the restaurant industry as much as I love it this past year, but I am timidly starting to go out again to places, and I'm looking for places that are possible on the side street because I feel they're safer. Places that have openings because they're supposed to be open on two sides. And I would say that 90% of them are not, maybe more than 90% of them are not. And the other night when you step off, there's supposed to be, I believe there's supposed to be some sort of a buffer zone between where you step off and the actual bike lane. But this particular place had no buffer zone. And I'm beginning to notice that many of them don't. You step out without thinking, or you've had a couple glasses of wine or whatever, and you take your life in your hands if a bike is whizzing by. You just don't know, and you're not thinking about that. And I really, something needs to be done. There needs to be some major enforcement. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there was some discussion of, for instance, Bodega 88 on Columbus, but the bike lane goes right between the outdoor seating and the restaurant, obviously. Bodrum on Amsterdam, an employee has been hit by bikes.
Oh, yeah, it's very common.
I was in Harvest Kitchen, but they're all over. I'm beginning to notice they are all over.
Well, we have Colleen still with us. That, I think we can all agree that having the bike lane go right smack through the middle of a restaurant is not the best configuration. Colleen, what's the DOT's thinking on that? That issue has to have come up.
It has come up, but restaurant owners have put in place safety, like signage or They have staffers there. What's the location, Barbara, that you mentioned?
Well,
'Cause
I love this restaurant, so I don't want to get them in trouble or single them out, but it happened to be Harvest Kitchen, which is between 72nd and
It's not getting them
75th.
into trouble. I mean, we can go out there and we'll inspect it and we'll tell them
Yeah,
what they're doing wrong.
But
and what they need to
Colleen,
do.
I would say that, I don't know, I don't want to give a percentage, but many have no buffer anymore. I think that have found that they can take up additional space and they can get more seating in there, and they're going to do whatever they can to.
So they're just not being compliant. So it's Harvest what?
Kitchen.
Okay.
So much for your favorite restaurant.
Yeah,
when you
thank
say
you.
a buffer, can you describe exactly what it, because I'm familiar with dozens of restaurants and it's just the bike lane going right through the, there's the sidewalk, there's the bike lane, and then there's the adjacent outdoor seating. Where is there supposed to be a buffer?
Where are you going to be?
Howard,
Mississippi. Oh, I'm not going there. Oh, no.
Could you mute yourself?
Howard, the restaurant seating should be only on the parking lane, so that the bike lane has a bike lane and a little bit of a buffer area. The buffer area should be free from the restaurant seating. Many of the restaurants have used also that area for their seating, and that's what Barbara is referring to.
Okay, well, I think the problem is even if there were that buffer zone, the idea that we have sidewalks with possible street seating for the patrons, then the bike lane, and then more seating for the patrons is a terrible configuration. Yeah. I think we can all agree on that.
This particular restaurant added additional seating that we're not aware of. I'm sure that's what happened.
Colleen, from walking the streets this past few weeks, many of the restaurants are really exceeding the areas where they're supposed to put seating. It's just like, because there's no enforcement. There's no enforcement anywhere right now. So, and it's not just the street seating, it's also the sidewalk seating. Many of the restaurants are encroaching on the sidewalk. They're supposed to have an 8-foot clearance, and sometimes you get 6 feet, 5 feet, 4 feet, because there's no enforcement.
Yeah, and again, if you're out there and you walk around and you see a restaurant is not complying, or there's an,
well, I can tell you can walk on Amsterdam and Columbus Avenue in this district, and you will find many restaurants like that. Or you have to just walk up and down the avenue.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this much: under the new permanent program, which DOT the outdoor dining is going to be under, there is going to be stricter enforcement and fines that's going to be issued.
When can we get some details on that new program, Colleen?
So we are planning to come back to the community boards. I don't know what the timeline will be, because a lot of community board have mentioned that they would like to have input in terms of, structure, the design.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Location wise. So once we have the guidelines finalized, we plan to come back to all of the community boards. So
when you say finalized, does that mean then subject to community input?
Well,
or just no more input, it's done?
No, we want community input. We would like community input. When I say finalize, I mean finalize on our end.
On your end. Okay,
yes,
great.
Yes.
Thank you.
But we're coming to the community board for additional input. Yes.
And I'm making the further point that the configuration where the bike lane, even if there is a buffer, goes right through the middle of the restaurant seating, is not the best configuration.
Yeah. And I think, keep in mind that under the emergency program, a lot of restaurants created these structures, with whatever guidance they were able to get. And they did their best. They did do their best. And I've spoke with a lot of restaurant owners who really are trying to be in compliance and make the changes, because, I get calls every day from different owners, and they are trying their best to be in compliance. And I think it's good to know. Well, I think to my point is that, there might be, quite a few restaurants that may not make the cut to have an outdoor dining based on where they're located. You know, they could be next to a bus lane or, you know, so forth and so forth.
Sure.
So not every restaurant in the city is going to be able to have outdoor dining. That's my take on that.
Yeah, no, I think we're in agreement on that. Otherwise, you couldn't have loading zones, bus stops, any
Exactly.
parking or whatever.
Right.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
There are some questions.
Sure.
Let's see. Rich, then Bill Ortiz, then Doug.
You should take, well, whatever.
I'm just
Committee
going
members
order.
first. Yeah.
Bill and Doug, do you want to go first or should I go?
I don't think it matters.
I don't
I've got the floor,
mind.
so I'll go.
I don't mind. You could go. Yeah.
So I just want to reiterate, and I happen to be on Columbus right now, and yeah, it's a problem that a lot of the restaurants are not in compliance and are right up to the bike lane. I'm standing right next to one right now. I agree with what Jerry said. You know, it's not a matter of us reporting individual restaurants. It's walking up and down the street, someone at DOT, seeing so many of them not in compliance. But ultimately, what Howard said is right on, which is, you know, even if they are in compliance, bicycles are legally vehicles, and we have vehicles going through restaurants. And as Barbara said, we've got people drinking in these restaurants. They might not be, you know, top of mind when they're stepping out of the restaurant, and they could step right into the path of a bike that's operating legally. And there will be a fatality. It's just a matter of time. This is a crazy setup. And everyone knows I'm a huge proponent both of the open dining and of the protected bike lanes, but we're going to have fatalities and something has to be done here. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and Colleen, I don't think we talked about the configuration, but I'd like you to address specifically the idea that the bike lanes go through the restaurants. You know, we talked about buffers, we talked about the actual structures that the restaurants put up. But what about the idea that the bike lanes have been directed right down the middle of the restaurant? What is the DOT? Does the DOT think that's a good idea? I just don't understand.
I mean, again, you know, under the new guidelines or the new program, these are all things we're going to have to reevaluate to see how they're working. I know some restaurants that are adjacent to a bike lane where they have the setup, I know they do have staffers out there just to make sure that, you know, their patrons, you know, are safe when they're crossing over to the bike paths. I know that, and I think some restaurants may have put up signage, you know, on the sidewalk or maybe near the sidewalk.
Oh, they have, yes.
Yes.
But there's a bigger issue in that, Colleen, these are restaurants, they have waiters. The waiters they go back and forth across the bike lane many, many, many times in an hour.
Yeah.
Isn't that don't you see that as a hazardous condition for them?
You know, I would imagine, yes, it is. I would imagine so, yes, that you would have to be.
Well, you have to imagine it. You just look at the street, you see it.
Oh, no, they're actually a little more used to watching for the bikes than the customers are. But again, an employee and a server at Bodrum was hit by a speeding bike once.
Oh, there was one, the owner of Jin Feng on Amson was killed.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it's not clear that the biker was doing anything wrong. It's just that again, you're putting a bike lane through the middle of a busy establishment. How could that possibly make sense?
Well, nobody expected this outdoor seating situation when these were constructed.
We have it now, and now I'm talking going
the
forward.
Outdoor dining got instituted, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you know, again, I mean, all of this will have to be carefully reviewed once the permanent program kicks off or, you know, is established.
Colleen, is it true that part of the new DOT taking over these cafes and in-street dining the city will then set a rate to charge the restaurants for some of these in-street dining locations?
I'm sure there's probably going to be some kind of rate involved, but I don't know much about that. Kind of like the outdoor cafe. I mean, that there was a rate that was paid when there was outdoor cafe, but I don't know what that number or what that figure would be.
No, I know you don't know it, but I think that's coming, and that may induce some restaurants to say, you know what? I think things are getting more back to normal. I'll do away with my street dining, but who knows? Maybe they'll just go for
Yeah,
sidewalks.
we don't know that.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet because
We don't know.
yeah, a lot of businesses do like the outdoor dining. So we don't know that yet.
Is DOT available to put special signage where there is outdoor dining in advance of, for instance, I'll use that Bodega 88 example. At 88th Street, right when a bike crosses that, maybe a big sign saying outdoor dining, please slow down and watch for pedestrians and servers or something like that?
That would be, I don't believe we would be amendable to doing something like that, because if we do that, I mean, we would have a whole sign clutter issue citywide. And keep in mind, you know, are folks really going to pay attention to that sign? I'm just saying. And plus the city has, we've instituted a sign declutter program many years ago. And I don't think this is something that we want to have installed citywide.
Okay.
Well, good street design reduces the need for signs like that.
Yes. Yes.
So try not to have busy cyclists or bikes going right through the middle of restaurants. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Just one other thing is a short-term solution is to mandate that restaurants have really good signs and even a gate before people step out of the restaurant into the bike lane.
Oh, that's an idea.
I don't know if a server would want to open the gate every time they go to serve somebody.
It could just be a swing bar, just like something really simple, but just a reminder, you know, you're walking out into a traffic lane.
Yes, I mean, if you've ever eaten at a place on 2nd Avenue, it's just unbelievable how the servers don't get smashed by speeding bikes, mopeds, and everything. It's just it's
same
wild.
on 9th Avenue, closer to home, and in Hell's Kitchen, which also has the disadvantage of very narrow sidewalks. Who's next? Bill Ortiz?
Yeah, thank you. I just kind of want to talk about a few points really quickly. Just remembering last year during COVID, outdoor dining and the way how the things are today, a lot of our decisions were impulse emergency decisions, right? I think we saw that there was a need for our restaurants to survive, our businesses to survive. And we've argued the point that it is important to have bike lanes so people can be safe and move safely. At the time, I remember a lot of people were uncomfortable with the trains, and just remembering where we were a year ago. It is how it is today because of decisions and how we felt a year ago. And I disagreed with it. And even to today, I disagree with the setup. And I'm happy to hear that some of us don't like the fact that bike lanes are zipping through a business. But I will say, I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to argue at all. I like solutions. So I like the idea that Ken brought up. I'm sorry, not Ken. Rich brought up some solutions. I actually wanted to propose 2 solutions. Although I saw that one was recently kind of nixed, putting in like some type of speed bumps in front of restaurants. I think the owner of Flor de Mayo tried one himself, but of course was not legal as it was not permitted by the city. But if the city could install speed bumps, as a matter of fact, when I take the bike home, so when I visit my parents and I bike home at night, I actually find it extremely safe to go through Broadway, then on Amsterdam, then on Columbus, because I just have the whole road to myself usually. And so if there's some speed bumps that can help, but actually what makes the bike lanes even more dangerous for pedestrians and anyone who's visiting a restaurant is the fact that it's really dark. You know, if you guys recall, what kept the streets lit up at night was our old payphones. The advertisements actually lit up the street. And there was a payphone that was recently removed from my parents' house on Amsterdam, across just right in front of Westside Kids. That payphone is gone. That street is dark. So I really think that if we were to continue to have something like this, I think it's going to be really hard to tell restaurants to dismantle their outdoor dining enclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we just need more light. We need more light for visibility for the waiters and waitresses, anyone who's dining. I think light would be really important. And I think a speed bump, just a city mandated speed bump, and it's something that cyclists will have to learn to ride through. I mean, there's something I'm willing to ride through on Amsterdam and Columbus, because at night it's just, it's very scary. So I just kind of wanted to think of some solutions and throw that out there.
Thank you.
Great. Let's see, Doug, and then Christian, and then Ken.
Thanks. So we did talk a lot about this, and it's even just evidenced by our conversation, it's going to be a comprehensive plan to re-envision the roadway dining, this, and all that. And I mean, I suppose a lot of this is going to, obviously come from DOT. It's going to be, there's going to be hearings at City Council, and so much of this from the fees, but of course the safety. And originally I mentioned this at our last full board meeting, I believe it was, that when we took a walk in the midst of COVID with a lot of the elected officials, one of the ideas we had was swapping the bike lane for the roadway seating. I understand that puts the bike lane closer to the vehicular traffic, but it seemed like there may be a way to do that if you create a buffer. But I would love, personally, this is not speaking on behalf of our committee or board, but I think that should be looked into, because that was the initial impulse, was of course you don't have the bike lane running, riding through the dining area or having, by the way, just quick correction, Jing Fong did not have the cafe there at that time, but it did result in a fatality. In Bodrum, the accident was not a server, it was a customer and a delivery vehicle, and e-bike, and actually they both were injured and they both were hospitalized. I was there that night. So, and other ideas, maybe flashing lights, maybe slowing down, a slow zone that is, approaching a dining area. But it just seems like this is going to really be a comprehensive process. And I really hope that we can have a seat at the table to discuss it, because I hear some great ideas here. And I imagine that the whole city is going to have to think about it. Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. Colleen, I don't know, maybe this is something we should talk offline. And you're probably aware of it, there is an issue on Columbus Avenue. I believe it's from the 90s all the way down to the 70s on the west side of Columbus on the no standing, where you have roadway seating that's set up. And apparently there have been some aggressive letters from DOT, cease and desist letters, asking some of the cafes to remove the structure 5 or 6 days a week, which is impossible to do. I think it's from 7 a.m. to.
Yeah.
And has that been resolved yet? Because it just seems incredibly punitive. We're now going on the other side of good actors that I think are being possibly overly enforced, but has that been addressed at all?
We issued a cease and desist for many restaurants that have been operating in those regulations. And it's something that has not been, I don't want to say resolved is the right word. It's just that they're not supposed to be there operating during those hours.
Right, and I understand that. I mean, I read the letters, at least of 1 or 2 of the cafes, and it was pretty harsh. That basically that DOT is going to disassemble their roadway dining and and take it away, and that they're also permanently suspended from having that permit again. And that just seems awfully harsh. And I think the idea of this, it's in a no standing zone. Is that what it is?
I think it's no standing during certain hours. You're not supposed to be there in with the setup.
Right. So
I think that's for street cleaning. And if the restaurants clean the space in front of their stores and receive a fine if they don't, so they can't obviously erect and take those massive things down several times a week. It's just
it has nothing to do with street cleaning rule regulations. No, it's
and what
not.
is it related to?
These are probably they could be rush hour regulations.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are not street cleaning regulations.
7.
These are I think they're regulations that says no standing from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. or so, something like that.
I think it's 7 to 10 or 11. I think.
Yeah, 7 to 10.
The idea is that the roadway seating, which is not a permanent structure, but it's not a movable structure daily, is an incredible hardship on these restaurants. So I just, and even if it's a, and I'm not an expert here, but if it's a rush hour or congestion issue.
Yeah, that's why it's those hours for Columbus.
Right, but are cars allowed to be driving on what would be the parking lane anyway? They're not allowed to.
That's what the no standing zones are.
Yeah, but when it's no standing, cars are allowed to drive on that lane?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know what we're going to do, but this, maybe we can take this up in new business, or would a letter from this committee, if we were willing to take it up, or of the board, be helpful, so we can advocate for some of these restaurants?
Doug, I think the problem there is that the restaurant city was meant to be in parking areas. And in many of the areas, the parking is permanent, but in some areas, parking is only temporary, which is what these no standing areas are for. And this is one of those times where they didn't think it through properly. And my opinion would have been that, yes, it would be great for them to be able to put the open seating there, but since the lane is not a permanent parking area, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to do it at all.
Yeah, I think the issue is that some of these structures are really overbuilt, and so nobody's going to be sitting in them, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. anyway, since the restaurants aren't even open. So perhaps these structures are a little more permanent than they should have been.
Or the other thing would have been to temporarily suspend the no standing zone regulation in those areas.
Yeah,
well, that I think the latter is perhaps more. It makes more sense, because look, you're talking just off the top of my head. You're talking about Bella Luna. You're talking about Good Enough to Eat. You're talking about all these restaurants. They literally have to take this away. They lose it, or even if they're allowed to do it, how can you do a safe roadway seat that you have to replace every day? There are barriers there, right, Colleen, that you have to have.
Yes, you have to have barriers, but I mean, again, when the program was initiated, it was an emergency program to help restaurant owners during the pandemic. I mean, there were structures that were built that, I want to say restaurant owners went above and beyond and spent a lot of money to build these structures. Come to find out, when we went out there to do the inspections, some of these structures were bolted. They were bolted onto the roadway or onto the sidewalk, which they're not supposed to do that. So corrections had to be made. There were structures that were built in areas where the parking regulations prohibited. And like what you just mentioned, these structures are not supposed to be there during those hours, because again, it's a moving lane. And so, we've asked the property owners or the restaurant owners that, we told them that they would have to remove the structures during those hours, which I know it's a hardship. I know, but again, it's the rules are the rules. And, we cannot allow them to have their structures there, because if we do that, we'd have to allow other restaurants that we've told them to, remove their structures in those regulations as well to be there. So,
if we change the zone or we advocate for that, then they're not breaking the law, right?
I don't know what you mean by changing.
What I mean is, if we pass a resolution, and this is a hypothetical situation, and I'm not speaking for the rest of our committee or board, but if we asked DOT to remove the no standing, at least for a period of time or permanently, then those cafes would be legal.
I will be very honest with you. We will not remove the sign. Just like we will not remove or relocate a bike share station to accommodate a restaurant.
Okay, well, I certainly hope you're not going to be removing the cafes, because the letter I read said that they were physically going to come and remove them. And that would be an awful thing to hurt these restaurants. And I just hope that doesn't happen. It would be an ugly day, and it would probably be.
I don't think it would be a good day for publicity for DOT, actually.
Yeah, and I don't think we are going to be out there removing structures, anytime soon.
I think we should let them come back to us because we've made it very clear there are some obviously bad things about the current configuration. They need to come back to us with some kind of plan because what we have
we will
now
come back
is
to the
simply
community.
unacceptable.
Yeah, and we will come back to the community board. We
Yep.
do come.
So again, I always say this, we pay a lot of money in taxes for experts who supposedly know what they're doing. Let's see what they come up with.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
We have two more people who wanted to speak, Ken and then Christian Cordova.
Yeah, I was going to ask another question, but I wanted to thank Doug for bringing this up. This hadn't occurred to me. I didn't know. It seems incredibly unfair that if you happen to be on the west side of Columbus, and your financial viability depends on having an outdoor restaurant and outdoor space, and you may not be able to survive simply because the city feels it's more important to move people driving cars through our district as quickly as possible. That it seems that we're still in the pandemic. A lot of rules are being suspended. It seems that this is something that could easily be suspended, and that we could. I think it's a much higher priority to try to help restaurants. It's already saved 100,000 restaurant jobs. How many more could be saved if we just got rid of this no standing on the west side of Columbus? So I would be all in favor of taking this up next month and with a resolution asking DOT to accomplish this as quickly as possible. It's not the kind of thing that can wait until 2023 when they take over this whole thing. And then my other question was, Colleen, what do the outdoor restaurants, what impact do they have on street sweeping on the avenues?
So the restaurant owners are responsible for cleaning their area. The street sweepers are going to continue doing what they do, but the owners are responsible for the sanitation, the garbage, cleaning up, the curbside area.
And how about, we've lost a lot of loading zones from a lot of the outdoor restaurants are actually in loading zones. Is DOT looking at compensating for that, since that would lead to more double parking?
Yeah, and again, if we look at loading zones to compensate for every community board where we have outdoor dining, it would have to be, on the cross streets. But at the moment, I don't believe that, we've, discussed this.
I would urge you to discuss it.
Yeah, we've discussed in countless times, Colleen, how loading and unloading packages in moving car lanes is just absolutely terrible. And I'm really surprised the DOT finds that acceptable.
I will definitely take that back.
Yeah, it's contributing to bad air quality because it's slowing throughput. If you have a delivery on both sides of the avenue, you're down to one moving lane on Columbus and Amsterdam. That's not good for anybody.
And yet they don't want to take away the throughput on the west side of Columbus. Well, they're willing to do this.
Right. How about that? What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Christian had one question, and then we're moving on. Christian.
Also, you have Michelle Parker on the attendee list that has had her hand raised for a long time.
Oh, really? I'm sorry, Michelle.
So you will have to handle that afterwards. I just want to remind everybody that the current situation is in effect because of the emergency condition that and the city owns in its wisdom decided to extend that emergency situation through the end of next year for the restaurants as we see. So I don't know that they are at this point willing to make any more changes, no matter how many resolutions we pass. Now, also, there have been many ideas being floated around, which are very good. We have to be ready for when they actually come back and say, these are the proposed rules. We need to get ready for, at that point, be able to comment and suggest so that we can have a greater impact on that, going towards the future. Thank you.
And last but not least, Michelle.
I didn't really want to say anything. Thank you for this interesting meeting. I'm just trying to figure out how this segues into preservation. Maybe Mark and I can talk another day on this.
Well, for us, it segues into the DNS. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Unless there's anything else, we are going to go to our favorite topic, the DNS. Andrew, do you want to take this one?
Okay. So I've sent everybody the last year's DNS, and we may want to review some of these. Some of these are obviously still we still want them. They haven't been accomplished yet. The first one is specific to certain street intersections, narrow the travel lanes on 66 between Amsterdam and West End. We've asked for that for years, and it has not happened yet. There has been excessive speeding on that block. It's a really wide block. We continue, I think we'll want to keep that in there to ask DOT to accomplish that. In addition to changing the signal timing at 66th and West End, which encourages that speeding. If you know you can't make the light by speeding, you won't speed.
Andrew, I think in the interest of efficiency, maybe we should just ask for things that we want to change in the DNS.
Okay, if everyone has had a chance to look at it, that would be great.
I read it relatively quickly. I saw the 106th Street mid-block lights in there. That definitely needs to come out.
That we got, so that can come out.
Yeah, that can come out.
Enforcement, we've asked for on the last full board meeting against e-bikes and those sort of things, but we can keep it in there because it's a sign that we want this.
Yeah, I think we should take out anything that's obviously happened. So I think the most efficient way to approach this is for people to propose things that they think should come out or to propose things that they think should come in. And if it's not controversial, we'll just do it. If it's controversial, we'll vote on it. And that's how we'll come up with a final document. Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
That makes sense. Yep.
So the 106 comes out. That's my contribution. Anyone else? Ken has his hand up.
Yeah, I have a few additions based on resolutions we passed in the last year.
Great.
Shall I just go down the list?
I have a question for Andrew. Andrew, do you want to do the final document, or do you want me to do it, or?
I think we'll do it together.
Okay.
We'll each make contributions to it. Okay.
So are you gonna? Well, I guess we'll both take notes then on what people are saying.
Well, yeah. The notes. Elizabeth is taking notes tonight too, and that should be sent to us.
So I have three sets of notes. You should be able to get it right. Great. Okay, Ken, shoot.
Okay. Where it says CB7 welcomes a comprehensive district-wide analysis of transportation issues, it takes up loading zones.
Yep, I see it.
I think we should acknowledge the success of DOT's West End Avenue neighborhood loading zone pilot, which I think started up last year, and call for its expansion on both West End Avenue and Central Park West. But I think we need to make reference to the neighborhood loading zone program. Okay. Right. Under left turn calming measures, we passed a resolution, I think in April, calling for more specifics on making left turns safer. We should make reference to that resolution. It calls for protected left turns at every intersection where left turns by vehicles are allowed, and asks for split phase signals, that they be the norm rather than the rare exception. So there's that. Daylighting at every corner. Well, we have a new resolution that sort of moderates that and asks for, I forget what it was, within a certain number of feet of a school.
Yeah.
And then parking. If you scroll down, we have a section on parking. I don't think we make reference to our call for a study to assess current policy regarding parking and curbside usage. So we should do that. And then the West 100th Street resolution. Should
Okay, we'll
go
make
in
sure
there
all
somewhere.
these get in, Ken.
Okay, that's it.
Who's next? Bill Ortiz.
Thank you. I just had a quick question on so a lot of these resolutions I remember that we passed as a board, and some has been around for a while. These are not enumerated by any way, right? It's we just popped it in this document. What I mean by it, is it ranked in order of, or could it be ranked in order of ones that had a popular vote, meaning some that won, 48-0, in order of those that won, 25-24. I think if we had it in listed order of what is the most popular through the community board, it would be an easier argument for us to show these are our needs. These are the top list of things that we kind of won on, and we can see what are the other ones that we did pass, but we would have more clarity on if we were to further discuss. Is that something we can do? Just put them in order?
That's a good question, because Steve, I'm glad you joined us. This is a question for you. We talked on the phone earlier today, and you seemed to imply that there was an order of priority to the DNS. And then I looked at it, and there isn't. It's really just a narrative. Should there be an order of priority, or is the way we've done it in past years sufficient?
So just to enlighten, I've actually been on the phone for like an hour. So I've heard the very detailed conversation about the shed. So I was a lead panelist. I moved over to the computer for this one. So I have been hearing lots of it. Listen, traditionally, I can only speak from my experience. So this is my first time, and maybe Mark can add as well. This is my first time as a chair. In all the other committees I've been, we've kind of ranked it 1 to 9, or there was a ranking process. I'm not saying that means that you guys have to do it ranking. I'm just saying, for instance, when I co-chaired YL, we ranked, top 5, top 3. And I believe, Ken, you may add from Parks or Barbara. I think there's a ranking system there. So I'm probably not giving you a full answer other than other committees have ranked. If you haven't ranked in the past, I don't know what the effect of that is, other than when we go to steering, we will then advocate for this. And the idea that a number 1 would be, if someone was advocating for your number 1 DNS item versus your 8, perhaps that would hold more value. But I don't think I haven't seen anywhere that it's mandated that you ranked. And I'll let Mark or Elizabeth, who are past chairs, perhaps add as well. But that's what I know as of now. I don't know if either of you feel differently. I see Mark's hand up, so I'll pass it off to Mark, and you can pass it off to Elizabeth. And
sure. And I very much welcome Elizabeth's comments and anybody else's who's had experience with this. In terms of the budget priorities, it is exactly as Stephen mentioned, and it is typical that you have some semblance of an order because you're going to be competing for slots with other committees and their priorities. So you may want to have a game plan about which of the budget priorities you want to focus on as getting into the final list for the full board, keeping in mind that the budget committee this year is reducing the number of proposals that would actually be among the core requests of with respect to the budget. And the remaining ones that don't make that list of 20 capital and 20 expense, as I understand it, will be the subject of a letter that goes straight to the agency and doesn't go to well, maybe it'll go to OMB as well. But the idea, as I understand it from Roberta, is that it'll go to the agency itself and say, look, we had, 1, 2, and 3 were in the top 20 of CB7, but here's 4, 5, 6, and 7 that the Transportation Committee wants to commend to your consideration. And if we were really smart, we'd send that to the borough president and the council members as well. So yes to what Stephen said. The distinction I'll raise here that may or may not be helpful is that that's the budget priorities. The discussion in the district needs statement, the narrative part of it, and I don't know where you are with that. Roberta had asked for that back in July, so I don't. You'll probably want to check in with her about all this. It is not essential that the district needs statement narrative follow any ordinal path. The only thing that is highly recommended is that if anything is important enough to be in your budget priorities, it should also be important enough to be somewhere in your narrative.
So Mark, you mentioned that we would be competing with other committees. In as much as a lot of our budget requests would likely be to DOT, the other committees likely would not be to DOT.
Correct, but the way that the budget priorities, the way that this process works is that CB7, take the capital budget, CB7 comes up with a #1 capital proposal. I'm just pulling one out of my head and say that there should be more affordable housing in some specific location for some specific population. #2 might very well be something having to do with the MTA, and #3 might very well be having something to do with the Parks Department, and some park needs a renovation. So there's one unified list of capital and one unified list of expense priorities for the whole of CB7. And so transportation and parks and HHS and housing and every other committee that has a priority will be making their pitch for mine should be #1, yours should be #2.
Sure, and of course, MTA being a state agency, we have very little sway over compared to city agencies. Yeah.
Other than suggesting that perhaps the city should kick in a little more than it does. You're absolutely right.
Oh, absolutely.
Just chiming in that Elizabeth had just put in the chat that she somewhat agrees with what Mark and I said.
With what you said, yes.
I do. I'm just running a quick, I'm going back and forth, but yes, I am 100% in agreement with what Mark and Steve, you both have said.
And I see what Ken put as well. And I think to his point, to clarify, it's the budget items that should be obviously clearly done as opposed to priorities, which I think I'm not going to say is grayer, but could be different. But we'll certainly be putting on our top budget items as well.
But right now we have before us the DNS. I haven't seen last year's budget priorities at all.
Well, the document does have budget priorities, what we listed for transportation, which were thermoplastic street markings, street and curb lane resurfacing, pedestrian initiated crossings in Central Park, and things
those
about
capital or expense?
Ken, just to clarify, not to crosstalk on page, I don't have the page, but it says, yeah, I thought so. It says budget priorities. So there is a section in.
Are those capital or expense?
Well, the most of that is capital. We would also ask for enforcement of all traffic violations and safety measures, which likely would be an NYPD and a DOT budget, and that would be expense, I'm guessing.
Just to clarify, it doesn't break it out, Ken, just to factually speak. So if you want to do that, but it has later in the document that was sent, it has budget priorities, and you guys can work through that, but just giving you an update.
Speed cameras, curb cuts, all of that. Most of that is capital. Any other hands up? Let me see. Doug, is your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole committee, we got an email from Jay, and that is a new resolution that on the e-bike, asking the DOT to do a study. And that's now official, full board voice. So I think that should be somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'll add it to the list. Thanks.
Thanks.
Any other hands? Don't see any.
Andrew, do you and I want to make these amendments and then recirculate it to the committee?
Yeah, I think we should do that.
Okay, Andrew and I will work on it and recirculate something. And if you think of anything that should come out, or I would ask you to review it in the next week or so. If you think of anything that should go in or should come out, just speak to me. Just email both me and Andrew.
May I just ask a question?
Sure.
Given the land use resolution to disapprove the restaurant plan, which falls right on to DOT, and I think the understanding, I think it's fair to say that the board as a whole wants to have a seat at the table in discussing the regs. So I don't know if that's a DOT, I mean, a transportation committee, DNS statement, and possibly
that would probably be land use, transportation, and BCI, all three of them.
We could throw it in. We'll throw it in.
Thanks.
You got one more hand. Barbara.
Yeah, I'd sent an email also after Jay sent his about enforcement, especially enforcement in the parks on the West Drive and in Riverside Park for what we discussed a lot about tonight with vehicles that are not supposed to be there. And you know, Captain Gallagher had said that during COVID that he really didn't want to penalize anybody, so he was not stopping any bikes other than just to give them a warning to go more slowly or to stay off areas that they were in. But you know, we have to move beyond that now, and it's really time to start a major enforcement. And I don't know how we're going to get that, but I definitely think it needs to be in our budget priorities.
Oh, enforcement is definitely going to be in there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Again, just feel free to email us on this.
Okay.
Andrew and Howard, could I just jump in for one quick second on what Barbara just mentioned? Calls for enforcement probably don't go to DOT. There is a different section in the DNS, in the online portal that relates to public safety, I think they call it, or something like that. So you probably want to, when you have a budget priority, you address it to an agency. You would probably address that to NYPD or the parks or both.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, that helps.
Yep. Okay, any old business or new business? I'll throw something out there. I'm going to make another effort to get Lyft or City Bike or whatever organization has a representative that would be willing to come to our meeting. I think the biggest problem lately has been their unbalanced stations. I know a lot of commuters, people wish to commute, so all due respect to Andrew, wish to commute by City Bike to jobs in Midtown or Lower Manhattan from this neighborhood, and there are literally, I've looked at the map, 0 bikes around. Meanwhile, downtown, it's impossible to park the bike. Lyft is instructing people just to leave it on the street, which is a terrible outcome. So I intend to look into that.
I completely agree with you, Howard. That's part of the reason why I take the train to work, because I made the mistake once of city biking to work and spent the past half hour looking for a place to dock.
Yeah, it's a really bad situation. We'll try to learn more about what's going on, what could be done about it.
We have a great new senior vice president of subways, Demetrius Critchlow. I'm going to try to get him to speak to the committee He is responsive as can be. When I see an incorrect sign or hear an incorrect announcement and I email him from the train, it is often corrected before I leave the train. That's how responsive he is. He is great. He really has been doing a wonderful job in the subways. They are now, because there have been so many COVID-related illnesses and or retirements, and there was a hiring freeze, a subway service suffered, particularly the A, C, and F lines, and they are now inducting a new class of motormen. They've cut a few of the procedures. It's normally an 8-month procedure. They've been able to make it 5 without impeding safety, which is of the utmost importance. And there will be a new class coming in to operate the subways, and that should reduce the delays that everybody has seen, especially with people coming back now. Last Friday, we hit 2.7 million riders, which was the highest since the pandemic. So we're doing really well. And I'm going to try to get Demetrius to come and speak to us. He's wonderful.
Andrew, is that about 50% of capacity? Do you know the number offhand?
We have had 6.2 or 6.3 million on the highest day. So, it's not 50% yet, but it's rapidly approaching. And right now, something like 29% of stations are accessible, and there are a lot more coming in this coming year and in 2022. A lot more stations will be made accessible.
It's anecdotal, but I've heard complaints from some people that the trains are unusually crowded during rush hour, and their thought was that they've cut the service more than the reduction in the number of people. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, there hasn't been a service cut. They're running as much service as they can with the employees that they have, but certainly in rush hour, they're putting in as much service as they possibly can. Absolutely, that would be foolhardy. However, people's commuting patterns have somewhat changed, and they will want to adjust to that. Commuter trains are adjusting to that. Metro North and Long Island Railroad. Sometimes the shoulder periods are now busier than the 6 to 8 a.m., for instance.
I just wanted to add a separate transit item, and Andrew, I know you've been involved in this, so I wanted to give you a big thank you. But the 1 to the S, which I think for our neighborhood, if we're talking about people who commute into the central business district, taking that shuttle has vastly improved over the last week.
It's a whole new shuttle.
Yes, it really is. And for anyone who has to go like I do when I commute in the morning from the 1 train and take the shuttle, it is like a vastly better experience. And I hope more people will do that if they do decide to use transit. If they have to go from 42nd Street from west to east. Or
yes, what they did, taking advantage of COVID and the lower ridership, was they actually did away with track 3. So it's just track 1 and 4 now. It's a wide island platform. It extends
and
really
track
far.
4 no longer goes on that awful congested side. It's on the other side.
You can't get over there
which is
now.
amazing.
But there's a beautiful new under 42nd Street passageway to 6th Avenue with art by Nick Cave in there. It's beautiful, and a free transfer to the BD F&M on 6th Avenue until midnight, not after midnight. That free transfer is closed.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to ease up congestion. I can't speak to how things are going to happen with East Side Access and everything else, but to me, it's for those people who are coming from the Upper West Side to go over to the East Side and to Midtown for work. It's really been a godsend.
It's great. And remember when you would go over to track 4, you would see the sign or announcement that
I would wait for the next track 1.
And you'd run over there and the doors would close in your face. Now it's one island platform with 2 tracks. You will never have that.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you.
Doug, do you have something?
I thought that the representative from Revel was great. I hope I wasn't too hard on her, but I thought she, it's important that they come, and I appreciate. I think we should have Lime here now, because I've seen a lot more Lime mopeds in our neighborhood. And my own personal non-scientific study is that the Lime riders are worse. And I don't know what type of training and enforcement or anything that they have. So I would love to invite, if it's okay with the rest of the committee, to invite Lime to come to our committee, similarly how Revel came tonight.
Yeah, any of these that operate in our neighborhood should be invited to come.
Yeah.
And happy to help with Lime if you need it. I know the folks who are.
Do the Lime vehicles have license plates?
Yes.
They do, okay.
And I think they're the same class of vehicle, they're mopeds, and
Yeah.
it just looks like they don't have their, they're married together.
Well,
it's a little softer in French. Right? No, but and the only other thing is, by the way, good news, Andrew. I'm surprised you didn't mention it. That I saw in the news that now officially all subway stations have cameras. Right?
They do indeed. All 472 stations.
That's great.
That is great.
Which leads me to my next question, which is I'm just seeing a tremendous amount of fare evasion on both the surface and underground. And I've had lots of conversations with bus drivers who just tell me all day, all night, they walk on, they don't care. And to boot, they're non-masked, non-fare paying people. And the bus drivers, all fairness to them, they don't want to get into a confrontation.
Sure.
Making everybody else feel uncomfortable. And I'm also uncomfortable that I'm paying my full fare and sitting next to someone, it's just awful. And I have seen zero enforcement. I always do my non-scientific reports to you. Never, ever, ever. In all the hundreds and hundreds of trips that I've taken on all sorts of lines, buses and trains, never seen any enforcement of mask wearing. I don't know, it scares me. And it was published that in August, I mentioned this at the top of our meeting, there were 0 fines issued.
Yep.
Entire city of New York, how is that possible? Who made that decision to issue no fines? What's up with that? Thank you.
It was incredible. I did see some enforcement of fare evasion recently, but as far as mask wearing enforcement, other than someone saying, "Where's your mask?" and they just continue to walk, that was it. Unfortunately, as I told you, I've seen some police officers without masks on. It's hard for them to enforce the mask mandate when they're not wearing.
Right, and some bus drivers are not wearing it, and
exactly.
But and you would know the name better, Andrew. The enforcement that comes on the select service buses to make sure
the Eagle team.
The Eagle team. I actually asked. They're usually very friendly and professional. I asked a member of the Eagle team if they also are able to enforce masks, and they said legally yes, but we're not doing it. We've not been tasked with that. But seems like,
as far as the fare evasion piece on buses, when Omni is in full swing, which hopefully it will be in 22, there'll be an MTA issued Omni card later this year. But when it's in really full swing everywhere, with all the fare types available, and all door boarding is coming to buses, which will speed buses, I believe if you don't tap, an alarm will go off, and any kind of person will be alerted that that person did not pay. I'm not 100% sure of that, if that's going to be on all of them yet. There is a pilot coming with all door boarding, and we're going to see how that works.
Thanks.
Also, they have announced that there's going to be more transit signal prioritization for buses so that they can get green lights. We have asked for 12 additional locations in District 7, and I'm going to follow up to see how we're faring on those requests. I don't believe any of them have been made TSP ready yet.
Is Mr. Demetrius surface as well as underground?
No. Frank Anacaro is the new head of buses. I can have him come as well.
That'd be great.
He's very responsive as well.
Anything else?
Any other business?
Great.
Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Again, email us if you have any additions or deletions to the DNS. Have a good night.
Okay.
See
Night.
you.
Hey, it looks
Bye-bye.
like Chris Giordano, you have your hand up. You want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment and ask a quick question. I'm sorry to hold people longer.
Sure, go ahead.
I didn't know that maybe there would be a public opportunity. So first, I think you all know that I'm here on behalf of the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations and Community Groups. And next Wednesday, September 22nd at 7 p.m., we're doing a virtual traffic safety forum. The community board has been supportive with this and will be helping promote it. Thanks in advance to Andrew and Howard for joining. Colleen will also join, as will members from both precincts. Los Deliveristas and Transportation Alternatives will be sending representatives as well. So putting that out there, I also wanted to ask a question to this committee. Are there a handful of, I would say, chronic issue locations within the district that you see as having, repeated issues that should be addressed in such a forum? A handful, 5 or 6. Like we know at 65th and Central Park West, there continues to be an issue. Are there a number of others that you're all aware of, maybe that the data supports?
96th and West End continues to be an issue. We've done various things there. We've begged DOT to put a curb extension on the south side of 96 because of PS 75 and all of the school kids that are crossing there and the traffic going to the Henry Hudson Parkway. That traffic is going to get more intense when the 79th Street Rotunda closes for reconstruction. Everybody's going to end up at 96th and 95th Street. So that's something that bears watching. And 79th Street, I don't know if you were on the call earlier, but we have asked DOT to put signage west of Amsterdam to let people know that if you want to go north, you must turn here because you can't do it when you get to Columbus. It's only one way you can go. There's been some speeding on 79th Street. There's issues on the intersections of West End Avenue where the entrances to the Henry Hudson Parkway are, 79th, 96th. We have some issues in various places. There's been speeding down 66th Street between Amsterdam and West End. We've asked DOT to narrow that. We've asked for some advance greens and no left turn red signals in places where we've seen too many pedestrian and or bike vehicular accidents. So yeah, we have some trouble spots for sure.
All right, thank you for this list. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Yes. I had my hand up.
Oh, Ken, okay.
Okay.
Chris, it's nice to have you don't break our string of having a Giordano at our meeting, although it's not the right one.
You're absolutely right. It's not the right one. And by the way, he misses you all and he sends his regards.
We miss him too.
Tell him we said hi.
Yeah.
I will, thanks.
Yeah. I hope he flunks out and comes back to us very quickly.
He's too smart to flunk out.
I know, absolutely. I just want to know, are you familiar with Crash Mapper?
I'm not.
Google that, or I can send you a link. You can drill down by community board district and see where all the crashes tend to be congregated. You'll notice a lot of them up Broadway at any intersection that Broadway crosses are a lot of crashes, and you can see fatalities, injuries by bicyclist, pedestrian, motor vehicle occupant. It's an amazing tool.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it.
I just had one last thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead, William.
Hi. Thank you for being here, Chris. I think another area that Andrew may have forgotten to mention, I think, is 72nd on West End Avenue. Is another problematic area as well. I know Roberta always seems to bring that up. But I would also recommend and suggest to you, Chris, to also update the information with some of the things we talked about today. In addition to problem areas with cars, we also have problem areas with cyclists. And that is with, the bike lanes going between restaurants. So definitely along Amsterdam and Columbus Avenue. I've known as a bike rider myself that it's very dangerous, and I pray that we don't have any severe accidents. Like I mentioned this last year, my dad and my dog had a really bad accident last year. My dog is fine, my dad is fine, but it was a really bad accident on Amsterdam Avenue in front of West Side Kids and Celeste. So just to add to, and that's why I'm saying like we need light because it was really dark. So just to kind of, if you're going to be researching this, I think the latest thing that we've learned from today is that bike lanes and making sure everyone is safe is another part of point of interest of keeping everyone safe.
Thank you for that. It seemed that, and I'll be really short, it seemed that in structuring this forum that maybe one way of looking at it is to pick these, handful of problem spots. We'll have the precincts there and DOT there as well as some of you all, and looking at them might be a good way of addressing the various issues and being as informative as possible. That seemed to be a way of framing it. I don't know what you all think.
Chris, is this a forum just for 64th and 67th, or is it the whole neighborhood?
The whole coalition, the Upper West Side Coalition. So all of the block associations and community groups that are a part of that will live stream. And the electeds and the community board have said that they will help promote it. So
I would encourage just to have as much community input as possible and less on politicians.
We don't intend for the electeds.
Sorry,
to
I
have,
just am thinking that.
No, fair enough. We don't intend the electeds to be panelists in the group.
And the only other corridor, just in recent months, I know we've all seen it. I know, Chris, you've been there, but just in our neighborhood, the 66th Street Amsterdam corridor between the vehicle moped / e-cyclist accident that killed the Broadway actress, and then just last weekend the crash at that killed somebody at 66th in Amsterdam. I just feel like that area seems to have a lot of issues.
Yes, for sure.
Could I throw one more in?
Please.
And that would be the areas around construction sites, around 84th, 85th, and Broadway. And then that whole Broadway corridor from about 91st to 96th, and then turning the corner on 96, heading down the hill. Especially there, we're actually lucky that the Fetner project was delayed while the formerly Extel project went ahead. Otherwise, it would have been a cluster, that trying to get a bus through there. Anyway, so I haven't heard of a lot of crashes in those scenes, but I do know that getting anything through them has been tricky. I don't know, maybe it's the new speed bump that actually slows everybody down. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to it. So construction sites in general, and it's always a movable feast, is something that you might want to throw into your list. Probably not the top, but somewhere in there.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. All right, we'll say good night then, folks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks. Thank you for doing the minutes, Elizabeth.